Hello and welcome back to another edition of the InduSoft Web Studio video training series. Today we're going to cover the new multi-touch feature that's available in InduSoft Web Studio version 7.1 Service Pack 1, available February 2013. What we're going to cover today in this video is the new feature called the multi-touch interface. And what we have in here is several different things. We have a global setting for multi-touch, and then we have a per screen settings for multi-touch that will allow us to pan and zoom in and zoom out and rotate. So we can set a global setting and then use it on every screen, or on a screen-by-screen basis, override those global settings and set those up accordingly on the screens that we want to, or disable them altogether. What are the general features? Zoom and pan, kind of what you're familiar with smartphones and tablets, where you can put your fingers on the screen and pinch and zoom, which is spread your fingers apart to zoom in or zoom out. And you can move your finger on the screen and pan around, move around. And there's a difference between inner and outer zooming, and we'll talk about that, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And then there's a new setting called inertia, which allows an object to continue to move on the screen even though you've released your finger. You get to kind of throw it across the screen, if you will. And some animations that we can do. We've added gestures to the resize, the rotate, and the position animations, and we've added new commands or new features inside of the command animation as well. We'll go through each of those. And screen objects now have the ability to scroll and some pan and zoom, so we'll cover those. We'll talk about each of those independently. What are some of the benefits or reasons why you would want to do this? There's a very familiar use now that smartphones and tablets have become as prominent as they have. It's a familiar use, familiar with that user interface. And those who are in an industrial environment or process environment that might be using a new touchscreen by a manufacturer that has multi-touch would expect to come up to a touchscreen and be able to do this. So rather than being frustrated, they walk up to this, and the user interface is what they're familiar with now. Zoom efficiency, no repeated plus or minus or up or down or in or out buttons. It's you put your fingers on the screen, spread them apart, push them back together, and it zooms in and out accordingly. Zoom in and out on diagrams or machinery or plant layouts. I have a machine that I'm going to bring in to this application and demonstrate to you how we can do that. Using the rotation gesture, knobs, needles, or if you need to set up some things like that. And if we set this up with the rotation gesture, you can't do it with one finger. You have to have two or more fingers. So there might be some reasons why you might want to do that. Let's talk about zoom. And if we have an object on a screen and we use the inner zoom function and we put our fingers on the screen and pinch and zoom accordingly. If the screen is set up as inner zoom, you will see that object grow and shrink within that space. If you have the screen, let's say, set up as outer zoom and you pinch and zoom that, the entire screen space will grow. So the object on the screen will grow, and the screen itself, let's say it's a pop-up screen, will get bigger as well. Now let's take that from zooming and talk about panning. So let's say that we have a screen with a rectangle on it, and this is the original, and you can see that boundary, that dotted line boundary, is where we're at. Let's say this is a pop-up screen, for example. And if we have that pop-up screen set up for inner zoom, and we put our two fingers on that screen, inner panning, then if we put our fingers on that screen and we move them accordingly, then the contents of that screen will move within that screen space. If that pan and zoom is set up for outer pan and zoom, then the screen itself will pan in relation to where it was previously. So you can see that there's some differences there, and you can take advantage of that however you need to within your application. let's talk about the rotation, the resize, and position. These animations now have a checkbox for gesture and inertia settings. So if you want those to take advantage of multi-touch, then you can check those. Something, we'll bring this up in a moment, need to mention here in a minute, but also on the command animation, you now have tabs, extra tabs for on touch start, on touch delta, and on complete, and I'll explain those in a moment. You also have the ability to add those functions inside of your screen script as well, which I'll show you in just a moment. So let's close this and talk a little bit about the demo application. We've added to the PC demo application that comes with comes installed when you install InduSoft Web Studio, if you've kept that selection checked. So let's go ahead and run that. This is the standard PC demo, and now here under features we've added, in addition to the multi-touch features, what I'll show you in just a moment, you can also see that we've added some features here for the text box as well. Let's see, go here under multi-touch. This is a selector that we've enabled rotation gesture on. Now in the Windows 8 tablet that I'm using, I have enabled the ability for you to see the touch points that I'm seeing. That's a setting that you can choose. So I'm going to choose this knob here and rotate this to different machines, and then along the right you can see that the machine data is changing and the OEE data is changing based on the selection that I have made. If I choose one finger here and try to rotate that, that object does not rotate. Because the gesture is enabled, I need the multi-touch or multiple fingers to be able to do this. So that, again, might be a reason why you might want to set that up. I'm going to go to the next screen here. Here we have an image of a check-weigher machine that's maybe weighing out potato chips or something. And if I put both of my fingers on the object and then rotate and move, you can see that the object will rotate, pan, zoom, and I can even move this around with one finger. And here's where the inertia settings come in. I'm going to kind of move this across the screen but then let go of it. I can move and let go and you can see it continue. And if I do it a little bit faster, it goes a little bit further. So there's a Microsoft website that we have a link to in our help system that shows you and helps explain the inertia settings coming back from the multi-touch from Microsoft's multi-touch settings there. So let's go to the let's see, on this screen here we have a whole series of machines, let's say, and what we can do is I can zoom out for this, pan this around, maybe zoom in on a particular machine, and even while this is set up this way, you can see I'm going to use this button here. I can still work with buttons even though they're zoomed in or zoomed out. So put this back to where that it was and go on to the next. Now this is an interesting feature. This helps keep operators aware of what they're doing. If I wanted to touch these buttons, maybe that's something that I get very used to. You know, when you think about it today, how often does a menu pop up where it says OK or cancel and you just hit OK and keep on going? It's very often that people don't read that. So maybe what we would have to do is click on this enabler button over here on the left hand side, and while I'm using that, then I can use my second finger to toggle the states of these buttons over here. If I let go of the first one, the enabler button I should say, then I can no longer change the states of those. I have to be pressing those, so we can interlock those together, if you will. Next one is just a demonstration of multi-touch capabilities. This particular tablet has 10 points of touch. I'm only going to demonstrate 5 here. So if I touch on the tips of each one of these fingers with my fingers and kind of move those around, sorry, it's kind of a small interface here, the tablet that I'm using. Let me try to do this with a couple different hands. Here we go. And you can see that we can get movement with multiple objects on the screen. So depending on how you want to do that. So that's what we have built into the new demo. Hopefully you can take that as a sales tool or a technical tool and see how we've implemented that. Now what I'm going to do is open up an application that I started before I started the video, just to get a framework going so I didn't have to spend the time to get that framework going. So what I have done is I've made a navigation screen here. I've pre-made some buttons for a couple of screens that I will create, and then I have some blank screens for position, resize, and rotation. I've got the command set up here and some other things. So let's get back into the development here, and let's first create a, what I wanted to do also show you is some of the tags that I have created. Again, just to save time, I've pre-created some tags for position and resize and rotation and temperature. And what I've also done is created a few different arrays that will hold some touch points when I get to the command animation. So this will be an array for 5 different fingers when I have an X and a Y, and an array for the ID, and an array for the time. And I'll show you how those are set up when we get there. But I've pre-made those tags already. Let's go back to the graphics, and I don't have a screen created to show the inner and outer zoom and pan yet, but let's first, before we do that, let's go into the project settings, and I'm going to go here under the viewer, and there's a new button down here called multi-touch settings. When we get here, we have the ability for each different screen style to choose the settings for that particular style. So for example, the default is replace partial screen, so I could set that up. And what I'm going to do is set up the default for pop-up screens. I'm going to set that up as inner and have these different settings, and it's going to be enabled. And then you can see the different inertia settings here for deceleration, angular rotation, and expansion deceleration. Once I have that set up, I can then use those settings for all those different screen types throughout the project. But what I'm going to do in this project is pretty much just use the settings on any given screen to override those global settings. So what I'll do is I'll create a brand new screen here. I'll insert, and I'm going to create that as a pop-up screen. I'm going to give it a title bar. First I have to change the border. I'll give it a title bar, and we'll call this inner. And on the inner, what we'll do is we'll just make this a smaller screen. We'll make it 300 pixels wide by 300 pixels tall. I'll move it down, let's say 200 pixels, and I'll start that from the left edge, let's say 300 pixels over. I will go into the multi-touch settings for this, and because this is the inner, what I'm going to do is not use the project defaults that I just showed you a moment ago. I'm going to override those settings and say that this is inner. I'll set up my zoom and maximum inner zoom, minimum and maximum outer zooms, and let's set that up as, let's say 200 or 300% here. We'll set up as 300%, and the accelerations and decelerations we'll keep as they are. And let's see, is that all I need? I think so. And on this screen, what we'll do is just to put a shape on there, similar to what I had in the slideshow that I showed you beforehand. I'll just put a rectangle on there, and then I'll put a button to close this screen. Now, what I would normally do is wait until after I'd saved this and pick this from the list, and that way I'm not mistyping this when I say close screen and typing the name here. But I know that I'm going to call this inner, and hopefully I don't misspell it, and you'll see what goes on there. And let's see. Okay, so I've created that screen, and if I right click on it, look at the attributes here under multi-touch settings, I've disabled the project defaults, and it's enable and it's set up as inner. Okay, now let's I'm going to save this screen. I'm going to virtually do the same thing, but I'm going to save this screen as we'll call this outer, and just change the few little things there that are different. So we'll go into screen attributes, we'll call this outer, and we'll keep it as pop-up. We will change the multi-touch settings to make this mode outer zoom and pan, and then I'm going to move it over to let's say 900 pixels on the screen, where we keep those separated a little bit, and let's say that's set up as outer. And then the only other thing that I need to do here is make this change the outer And go back to the button and change the text on it. And now we can save this screen as outer. Okay, so now we have outer. And guess what? I didn't save the inner setting, so let's go back and do that. Save as, my mistake here, inner, and go back and make those exact same changes here. Sorry about that. Inner, and multi-touch settings, we'll change back to inner, and go back to the button, inner, and okay, sorry about that, just a couple minutes, a couple seconds there, and save and close this. Now when we run this, I already have the buttons and the navigation set up to work with those screens, so let's give it a try. Hopefully I didn't make any other mistakes. Let's talk about the inner zoom and pan first. I bring this screen up. Oh, it's going to be in the same position, that's okay. If I put two fingers on the screen here and move my fingers apart, you can see that it zooms within that window, and I can pan it with one finger and zoom. Now this, I believe the setting was up to automatic, so I don't know how big it will go, but if I want to close this, then I can close that. Now on the outer settings, when I put two fingers on the screen, you can see that I can adjust the size of the pop-up screen itself. And you can see what happens when it runs into the edge or the boundary of the screen. It kind of maxes out and won't let you position it off the edge. So here I can close that, and you can see how those work independent of each other there. Now let's go talk about position here for a second, and we'll talk about the position animation. Now what I'm going to do is, off the screen, I actually have a few different objects saved, and what I'm going to do is copy those objects and paste them on the screen. Now these are just bitmaps that I have open in Windows Paint. I'm going to paste this in here, and this is how this pastes in here. If you need more information on how to handle graphics, you can see some of our other training videos that we have. You see this extra little handle here? This is the place where you pick what color you want to be transparent, if you have that chosen, which I'll choose that, and now we have a nice little soccer ball or football, depending on what part of the world you're from. Here, I'm going to stick this up in the upper corner, and I'm going to apply a position animation to this. And once I do that, I can set up my tags and ranges for that. Now I have tags set up for the horizontal position here, position H, and I also have a tag for the vertical position here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a range. Now I'm going to allow this to go from 1 to 100 in both of those, and the position, I'm going to only let it go up into this upper corner, and I'm going to allow it to go, let's say, this is a pretty wide screen. Let's go 1400 pixels horizontally, and 600 pixels vertically. And then I'm going to enable the gestures on this. Now I'm going to come back and do inertia in just a moment, but let's save this and run this. And what you can see here is now I can grab this with my finger and move this around on the screen, and because I have it set up to go to 1400 pixels wide and 600 pixels down, you can see that I can position it just about anywhere within this window here. Now I could set up additional animations on here to allow me to rotate and whatnot, but just for the sake of keeping things independent, I have just one animation applied. You can do multiple. Inertia, I'm moving my finger and letting it go, and it doesn't go any farther than what I let my finger go. So let's go turn on the inertia here and look at some of those settings. So I'm going to exit this, and now let's go back to position, and here I'm going to turn on the inertia. And let's go change the settings in the inertia settings and the screen attributes here for the inertia. Now 0.5 is relatively not much deceleration. So let's we'll take a look at this. If we run this, And now we go to position. Now you can see when I move my finger and let go, it still continues on, and it depends on how fast I do that and how far I'm moving. You can see that it does it at different rates. So it again, you can look at our help system. We have a link to the Microsoft developers site to show you what those settings are and what they mean and how much they decelerate. Let's just go back in real quick here, and I'm going to change that here under Screen Attributes, Multi-Touch Settings. I'm going to change this, let's say, to a 1 and do that same test. Here we click on Run, click on Position, and now when I move and let go, you can see it doesn't go nearly as far as it did before. So somewhere in between there might be the settings that you desire if you want to use inertia on that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is let's see, the resize. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go off screen here and grab a picture, and here in the resize screen I'm going to paste that in here, and it's a picture, if you recognize this from the demo that we have of the water facility or water tanks or water treatment facility. And what I'm going to do here is apply the resize animation to this. Now I have a couple of tags already set up for resize for horizontal and resize width, just to save myself some time here. And the value range I'm going to set from 1 to 100. Now we want to be careful here. We don't want to set this as a percentage 0 when we first start out, because the object will disappear. So what we might want is a minimum size of 50% on both horizontal and vertical, and maybe we allow this to go up to 300% on height and width when we're resizing. So we need to make sure that we enable that gesture. I'm going to leave inertia disabled for this. And another thing is where do we want it to grow and shrink from? In this case, it would grow from this upper left-hand corner up here. It might be a little bit more intuitive to make it grow from the center out. So what you will see, since these tags will start out virtually at 0 or 1. In fact, let's go take a look to see what they are. They're currently at 0. So what will happen is this thing will show up at 50% initially. So let's go take a look at that. And when we run and go to resize, you can see it's 50%. And if I put 2 fingers inside of there and I move my fingers apart, you can see that we can go up to 300% of its normal size. So you can see we can get quite large. We can zoom in on that. Now I'm not going to set up panning on this. Again, trying to keep these understanding of being independent. But what I can do here is you can show you the pinch and the zoom, so you can resize that graphic. Now that might be some type of machine graphic where you want to zoom in on a particular part of the machine and see that specifically. So the next thing we're going to do is rotation. And guess what? Off screen I have another picture that I've made, and I want to copy that and come in here to rotation and paste that on the screen and turn that background transparent. Now what I've done here is I've set up this knob looking thing just to give you an idea of how we can rotate. Now this is a picture, a bitmap that I've made in a third-party software tool just to create the pictures and give yourself a pointer here. Now you can do this with built-in objects, anything that you could rotate. So for example, closed polygons and other pictures and things of that nature that we can apply the rotation animation to. So here I'm going to click on the object. I'm going to apply the rotation animation to it. And now I'm going to configure a tag, again, that I previously set up called rotation 1. And I'm going to set up a minimum range here from 0 to 100, just to the values there. And I'll start this out at negative 360, 360 to positive 360. And I just remembered this is not necessarily what I want to do, because what this will do is that value 0, it'll already be rotated 360 degrees around. It'll kind of be stuck there. So if I set this to, let's say, a minimum value of -100, at 0, it'll be right where it is, and then this will allow us to rotate it all the way around in either direction. And we need to apply the gesture on here. So now we can close this and say yes. And now when we run this, take a look at the rotation. I can put 2 fingers in this object, and oh, guess what? I didn't rotate it around the center, so it's rotating around the upper left-hand corner. Would you believe that I did that on purpose just to illustrate a point? I don't believe me either at this point. So what we need to do here is change this to center, and now it will rotate around that center point. And say run, rotation. And now when I touch, I can rotate that knob in either direction. It starts out at 0, and then as I rotate it all around, that value will go to -100. And if I keep going, it'll go all the way up to +100. So you can see how that is set up there. We can get that value out of the rotation, or by using the rotation 1 tag. So there's the 3 different gestures that are built into the rotation, the position, and the resize animations. The next thing we're going to talk about is the command animation. Now I have a screen set up here, excuse me, with some tags, displaying some tags for the X and Y position, and the ID of the touch, and the time. These are all values that are reported back by the interface, depending on the touch, multi-touch support in the device that you have. And every device is just a little bit different, and it may take some getting used to depending on the device that you're using and how that's reported back. But what we've done here is I've just applied a position animation just so I can move this 500 pixels away from here. But the important thing that I want to look at is the command. Now over here we've added some new commands for on-touch start, on-touch delta, and on-touch complete. And I'll explain those here in a minute. In fact, let me pull up my information here. Now the on-touch tab here, it receives all of the touch events. So anytime you press, let's say, 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, you will get all of the information into these variables for all of those different touch points. So for example, X and Y values for multiple touches will become an array. So if you've pressed 1 finger on the screen, you have element 0 of the array for X and Y value, the flags, the mask, the time that it was pressed, the contact, so on and so forth. And as you add more fingers or more touch points to the screen, that array will grow in size to the number of touch points that you have. Now, the first time that I programmed this and tried, I just used kind of a brute force method, and I put every single one of these variables. So I had ARX1, ARX2, ARX3, or 0, 1, 2, and 3. And what I didn't realize, and you'll take a note in our documentation, is that the array actually grows and shrinks depending on how many touch points you have on the screen. So it needed to be variable and allow it to grow and shrink. So what we found was this VBScript command function called ubound, and that reports back the number of elements of the array that it has. And we use that number to determine how many touch points we have. And I've displayed that on the top up here. So we can see that if we're pressing 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, so on and so forth. So we can keep track of that. Now, what I want to point out is you probably won't be using this command animation because the rotation, the position, and the resize gestures do just about everything that you're going to want to do. And with the screen zoom and pan as well. This is only if you're going to need to be very, very flexible. So rather than putting all of those in here, what we've done is we've come up with a script, and this script is inside the help system as well. Now mine has a little bit different variables than the script, but it's the same concept. But the basic idea is we first find out how many touch points or how big is the array, and then we go through this loop that number of times and look at the points for X and Y where you're pressing and put those into the touch X and the touch Y tags, which we then display over here on the screen. We then look at the ID, the array IDs that are coming out from here, and then the time, and that's down in the milliseconds, that is reported back by the computer or tablet that you're using. Now the IDs are an incremental number that Microsoft or Windows assigns for every touch point. So for example, if you've touched the screen 200 times, the next time you'll get 201. If you press the screen, you'll get 202, 203, and that number seems to be reset by cycling power on the device, and as I understand it, it will go up or increment based on whatever settings are in the computer that you have, and or be reset based on device by device. So that might not be reset just by power cycling. It may be held in an internal memory, but look at the documentation or pay attention to the device that you're using to see how that works. The other thing that we've done here, and now this itself would just work, but what we also realized is that the values, if you release additional fingers, let's say you've pressed 5 fingers on the screen, those values will not disappear out of those. So you have to do some housekeeping, and we've put this script section here also in the help, so that you can do some house cleaning and clean up those values and reset those back. So let's see how this works with all that explanation. So save this screen, run this, and go to the command. Now you can see that I'm currently pressing 0 fingers, and I press 1 finger on the screen, 2 fingers on the screen. It looks like I have my count a little bit wrong there, but you can see that as I move my second finger, the X and the Y change. If I move my first finger, the X and the Y change. And as I add fingers to this, you can see that I can get multiple fingers there. So looks like I have a slight problem with my script, but you get the point as what you can do by monitoring those, and you can adjust, and if you needed to scroll some things up and down or move some things, you can do that accordingly. So that's how you do that. Let's go back in briefly and cover the rest of those tabs here under the command. Oops, under the command, close that screen. So we covered on touch. Now that just so you know that gets all of the different touch points that I'm using, and that monitors that as you add and remove fingers from the screen or touch points. The on touch start happens only for the first touch on the object that you are dealing with. So for instance, if you have this object, if you have this enabled, when you touch the first finger on the screen, you'll get the on touch start event. And you can add and remove additional fingers, but it's really only going to monitor just that first finger. Now, even though you add and remove fingers, and the on-touch start will not monitor them, but the on-touch, and I'll show you the on-touch delta, will continue to monitor those as well. So the on-touch delta is triggered in the same way as the on-touch event. You have arrays of for the X and the Y, and you get that information back, but it's been pre-processed so that it provides information of the delta, the change in Y, the change in X, the expansion value, the rotation value. So it's been pre-processed and pre-calculated so that you don't have to do all that to get that information out. The last one is on touch complete, and this is executed when you remove your touch your fingers, and you can get the last touched point out of this, so you know that when you're releasing things, you can do things like clearing of values and things of that nature, and know that when you're no longer touching the screen. So there's a lot of different flexibility in there. Now we've also taken those same ideas with those tabs, and here under under graphics, the screen script that can normally execute on open of the screen, on while, and on close, you can add additional subroutines in here. So adding touch events, we can add on touch, on start, on delta, and on completed, just as we just showed. And you can put your information inside of here as well. So that's a different way to get at that same information. So that's how that works. And the last thing that I wanted to show you is one other thing that we've added to the grid object, the trend object, and the alarm object. So if I come in here and I get some values in my trend object, and I'm also using this to generate alarms, you can see some values here. I can put two fingers on my trend, and I can zoom and shrink, and I can even pan this back and forth depending on my data. I can scroll back. I think it was a few minutes ago, quite a few minutes ago. How far back do I have to go here to get some data? This is actually going back in history and grabbing some information out. So I can see that it's been pretty much flatlined for a while I was recording everything else. And let me scroll back here. I get all the way back to the beginning. And there's our data again. So you can pan and zoom and scroll for that. In addition to that, here in the grid object, I can use a single finger to select an individual object, but I can use two fingers now to scroll up and down on that. So that's something new that we've added. And on the alarm event control object, I can use a single finger to select an individual alarm, or I can use two fingers, and you can see the scroll bar on the right is scrolling. I can scroll up and down on those alarms as well. So that's some features that we've added. So hopefully this has been of use to you, and you understand now the new multi-touch feature, and you're going to go off and implement this. What we would do, what we'd like to do, is offer you to, if you implement multi-touch, we'd like to know how you've done it, or potentially even write up a case study on your application and highlight your company. So give us a call or shoot us an email at info@indusoft.com and let us know what you've done with multi-touch. And thank you, and have a great day.